Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's special edition ATU faculty webinar. Thank you for joining us for what I know will be an insightful conversation this morning. Today, I've invited two current ATU faculty users, Lucas Dargo and Julie Lies from Manchester University, to share their perspectives on integrating ATU into their teaching and to discuss the strategies that they've used to drive program outcomes through ATU. So my name is Christopher Schmidt, and I serve as the education lead for ATU. I'm also an athletic training educator myself, and I've served as a program director at both the undergraduate and graduate programs, and both of those levels, in addition to several volunteer roles within our professional organizations. But now I spend my time creating resources for all of you, my fellow colleagues in athletic training education. I'll certainly share my contact information at the end of the presentation. We might also drop it into the chat, but you will find it in the resources tab of the webinar toolbar. Please reach out anytime if you have questions or if you'd like to schedule an individual or group demonstration of ATU. So just as we get started today, a few ground rules for about the next half hour, 35 minutes or so, we'll have a time of prompted Q&A with our faculty guests. And these question prompts are topics that we brainstormed as a group and thought about. But, please feel free to put questions or comments in the chat. We'll certainly do our best to keep an eye on those and then curate them for the final, 10 minutes or so of open discussion and Q&A. Please do note that the webinar is now being recorded, although when we move into our Q&A and open discussion, we will likely stop the recording, so you're free to converse, much like we're in a faculty lounge. But the recording will be available to everyone within the next couple of weeks on the clinicalpattern.com website through the educator events page. And I really encourage everyone to take a look at this page. There's a lot of resources there for you. You can register for future live webinars, access our on-demand library of all of our previous faculty webinars. You can now filter those webinars by topic if you're looking for just certain things. So that's a really nice enhancement, as well as you can find many other educator-specific resources there on that page. I have also posted several resource guides in the resources tab, which you should have access to in your webinar toolbar. And that includes how to leverage the ATU video library to enhance motor learning, how to use ATU simulations to engage your learners. I've also posted a best practices document for teaching with ATU, today's presentation slides, and a lot of other resource links that I think you will find very helpful. So before we begin our conversation, allow me to formally introduce today's featured faculty guest, and let's begin with Dr. Lucas Dargo. So Lucas is currently the director of the Master of Athletic Training program and director of Interprofessional Education at Manchester University. Before coming to Manchester, he worked in the secondary and industrial settings. He is the president-elect of the Indiana Athletic Trainers Association, the IATA. He has formerly served as the chair of the District 4 Governmental Affairs Committee for the National Athletic Trainers Association and served nearly a decade for the District 4 as chair of the District 4 IATA Governmental Affairs Committee. I want to get that correct. He received his doctorate in athletic training from Indiana State University, a Master of Athletic Training from Ohio University, and a Bachelor of Athletic Training from Ball State University. Next, I'm pleased to introduce Julie Lies. Julie serves as the Director of the Office of Experiential Education, Director of Clinical Education for Athletic Training, and Assistant Professor of Athletic Training at Manchester University. A Fort Wayne native, she brings extensive experience from her career as a collegiate head athletic trainer prior to joining Manchester. Julie holds a Master of Public Management from Indiana University and a Bachelor of Science in Athletic Training from Purdue University. So Lucas and Julie, thank you both for joining us today.
Well, thank you for
Lucas,
having us, Chris. We're very excited to be here with you.
great. Thank you. Lucas, let's start with you. So give us a brief kind of overview of the AT program there at Manchester, a little bit about your role and the courses that you teach.
Yeah, so this is actually my 8th year at Manchester. I used to be in the previous role, I was the clin ed coordinator. And so I really grown since becoming program director during the pandemic. And so that's really what drove us to, you know, start to use more online resources and really grow as a program. And so the last several years have been all about trying to prepare for our self-study and, just knowing that the reshaping of the landscape for higher ed has been quite challenging for us. And so I think we really try to grow and our partnerships and try to find new ways to do old things. I primarily teach our orthopedic, non-orthopedic evaluation courses and the healthcare administration courses, probably by far my favorite, obviously with governmental affairs and all things advocacy.
Yeah.
But I also fill in, other program directors on here know that we fill in all places. So I have taught everything in our curriculum except rehab. That is as the one place that I have not explored yet, but I've learned to never say never. But I'm really excited to be here with you all and hope that Julie and I can just help you avoid lots of mistakes we made and just I think just learn the amazing tool that is ATU and the amazing resources that go along with that. So again, thanks, Chris, for letting us be here with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate all that you've said about the role that you have as a program director. I think a lot of us can relate in our clinical practice roles, our administrative roles, our teaching roles. We wear a lot of hats, we do a lot of things. But that also helps us know the program from the inside out, having taught, a number of courses. So the overview of the AT program. Can you give us a little bit, maybe the 30,000 foot view of how the program is structured, your cohorts, the curriculum? How does that kind of lay out for everybody?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I would have said that we're a pretty small program up until this year. We typically have had, I'd say like 10 to 14 was about where we were, but we've been really fortunate. We have 18 in our first year cohort right now, but we have 7 in our second year cohort. So it's just kind of interesting to see how we've grown. We've really found that a lot of our students come from northeastern Indiana, and so we've been extremely intentional. I use the phrase catch and release. So Julie and I are really dedicated to making sure that we provide quality athletic training services to northern Indiana. And obviously we try to prepare our students that they can go anywhere, but we found that our students fall in love with the city and want to make this their home. We have many students that since I've been here, they've started their families, and it's just been so fun to watch. But to talk a little bit more about how our program is structured, so we don't start in the summer, unlike many programs. That was decided before I became program director. And so we start with emergency care. Our first 8 weeks, we do like an 8 weeks on campus, 8 weeks off model for the majority of our program. And so it's emergency care and a lot of the foundational skills early on. We then have our students go out to high schools, secondary schools, the primary place where they go the next 8 weeks. And they'll have online throughout this time Julie's clinical courses, but then we bring them back for the final exam for that class. Then as we go into our spring semester, that's when we do our orthopedic evaluation courses. That's pretty much all they're focusing on. Then as we go into the summer, that's our rehab courses. And then as we go into the summer, they go into their immersion all the way from early August all the way into the middle of October. Then they come back for the non-ortho eval, the health administration courses. Then they go out in the spring, the first half. Then we bring them back for all things patient-centered care. So our behavioral health course and then our cultural competency course that really just contains all of those DI2 standards, but also try to reinforce topics throughout the curriculum that we find that there's holes in. So it's a very quick 2 years, it feels like. I cannot believe we're in the last Friday of March. But we've made a lot of changes, and we'll talk today about those changes to get to the curriculum that I just shared with you. A lot of learning.
Yeah, right. And so when you're describing that, right, there's a lot of didactic, clinical intermix, both on campus, out in the community, clinical placements, field work, students really engaging with patients pretty early on, bringing those experiences back to the classroom, getting a little bit more didactic information, and then going back out again. So as you consider, the resources that are available through ATU, what was something that, as you're looking at your curriculum, your design, first drew you to ATU? Was there something that was like, I'm interested in that? Yeah, particularly your involvement with ATU.
Yeah, so I'm so fortunate because you guys, ATU provided all AT educators, and I think all students, the free resource during the pandemic. And so I was exposed to it there, but I just being a new educator, coming in and really just trying to learn all things Katie, I think I was focused so much more on the nuts and bolts and the overarching things. It really wasn't, until the last couple of years we realized that we really need to streamline a lot of our resources. So, for example, we have a lot of YouTube videos. Julie and I, we still have some YouTube videos that are in our classes, and they're okay, but the amount of vetting that it takes to have a good ATU resource versus a YouTube resource, there's no comparison, right? And so we needed something that was more evidence-based, something that truly was more geared towards athletic trainers, and that had that language. And so I think that was a big draw for us, is just knowing that this essentially was going to be able to replace all of that hunting and gathering of those other resources, not just for the videos, but to really help supplement our textbooks as well. And so I think those are the two primary draws, but I also think it was the need for our students to be able to, I think, have more standardization as they, as you look at between the 2 years, and all of the different course instructors, because how we might teach something might be a little different based on our education. And I think that was something that I was looking for specifically, was something that I knew how it was taught, even in a class that I wasn't the primary instructor on. And that, I think that primarily came from, being program director. I wanted to know what were some elements that I could control, even if the course instructor, went rogue or they just had a different experience. That's really what it came down to.
Sure, sure. So I heard streamlining resources, right, and standardization, and kind of vetting resources that you can trust. So if I can ask, how's it going with those things, right? Have you felt, and particularly the students, right, the ultimate uh, consumer, if you will, the ultimate, outcome? How has been the experience for you as the program director, as an educator, and then, the responses you're getting from students?
Yeah, so there's a couple answers there, and so I feel like as a program director, I'm going through a self-study right now. So just if Julie and I look a little tired, that's why. If we stumble over our words, 5 a.m. came awfully early this morning, but I think whether it be good or bad, I think there's a lot of debate that we can have offline about, is our pass rate, is that the place where we really should be hanging our hat? But I would say, as someone who talks with my key stakeholders, having a high pass rate is a really important part of our jobs. And so far we're 100% for our first time pass rate, and that's something that I think was my initial draw, right? Like we wanted to have higher pass rates. We wanted to make sure our dean knew that we had quality instruction from that piece. But I think we all know that you can have quality instruction without having 100% first time pass rate. And so I think that's where, I think our students have been able to demonstrate that not only are they using these resources, but they're retaining these resources. So, for example, a couple of weeks ago, we had midterms, and I assign each week I assign different resources that go along with the course topic. And so that was something that I learned, was that really how to integrate that and make it so that Canvas, our learning management system, and ATU, that they were really streamlined. And we found out they actually retain the information. They were citing not my amazing course lectures, not the not the wonderful textbook, but they were able to take those ATU resources that I had them have and talk about why they remembered those pieces of anatomy or part of that orthopedic exam. And so I think that was my real aha moment, was, oh, wow, like not only has it helped improve the pass rates, and I'd also tell you, as we're going through the self-study and we're looking at how are we enhancing the teaching of our curriculum, and then also the assessment piece as we look at the fall, because this is now our second year almost that we've introduced this, to be able to see how students have drastically improved on several of the different exams. I think, of course, there's some different variables in there, but this, I would say, is the largest variable in our program right now. For the most part, we have generally the same, PowerPoints, the same slide decks and things like that. But I feel like the self-studies really helped open my eyes to seeing how we went from, it was okay. I don't think it was terrible. I don't think it was bad. But to be able to see that students are able to reach mastery on these skills at a much higher rate, I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple of questions related to your role as program director and accreditation, self-study, and I'm just going to set those aside for a moment to ask about maybe some logistics of, did you begin with your faculty integrating ATU right away? Was it an eventual, let's do one class at a time, part A of that, and then part B, any buy-in? How did you work on, hey, we're doing this, try it out? So a couple of those logistic things, how would you respond to those?
Yeah, so that's exactly why we're here today, Chris. So you're not going to do what we did. So it's really, it went from like during the pandemic, we had a lot of this, we were making the resources available, but I think that it was truthfully even worse than haphazardous. But I think with our knowing that we were not having the pass rates that we were accustomed to, we started having really good pass rates after we got out of the pandemic slush. But it was an all 0 to 90 type approach. And then we hired Julie as we were getting ready to put this on there. And so I think, and when I do something, one of my character flaws, I go 0 to 90 just in life. So I think we started integrating this really quickly. And I think that we tried to listen to you, Chris. Like we started in the summer because we lost our simulation director, and we needed to be able to have a way to have some of these, mini sims that I'd watched a webinar like we're on today, and we started to have it in our general medicine course, and started to use that to help supplement some of our simulations. But it was something that Julie, as she came, we really started integrating many of the sims. We really didn't, I would say, we didn't really curriculum map. We curriculum mapped after the fact. And if you look at the curriculum map, that all the different resources that are on there, it looked really great. But I think as we started to look at this year particularly, and we started to look at how many resources were we asking students to engage with, and then even as we were, trying to do the quality improvement, quality assurance piece of integrating this technology, we even found that with our first years, they're finding that the organization, like I was talking about with on Canvas, has drastically improved. They, I think, would have, it looked like they had a much more favorable view of our use of ATU than our second years. And not that, we didn't have like this drastic, like ATU is the worst thing ever, but we did have one student say like they really didn't feel like it added any more value than what they were receiving in others. And then the organization piece, like that is the one thing that I think both first and second years did stay. I think we're getting better, but I think that there is opportunity for improvement. But it is also interesting that we've had several students that they just have responded very favorably. And so we didn't have Not every student in the program responded. I wish that I could have had that 100% first time pass rate. But I would say anecdotally, I would say that students have been very eager to give feedback. And I think they've given us a lot of this information that we can share with you because we've been intentional about knowing that we were probably not doing it right. But I think that the lessons that they've taught us is that it's it's all about the timing, and it's about making sure that we're not introducing content too early, because that scaffolding that the best practice models talk about is so critical. And I think it's that balance that we've really tried to find is, how do we integrate this in the curriculum, knowing that it's a very quick curriculum, but also making sure we don't overwhelm students. And I think that's where we are right now. I think we're still trying to figure out some of those pieces.
Sure, sure. Well, and I think it's a sign of being conscientious educators, much like all of us here, spending time and reflecting on our craft and listening to what students say and making adjustments where appropriate and, constantly evolving and adding more tools to our toolbox and, meeting standards and outcomes. But it's an ongoing process, right? We never arrive and feel like we have solved everything. So, Lucas, I'm going to let you rest your voice for a moment. We're going to transition over to Julie and get her perspective because it's slightly different and her background slightly different. So, Julie, tell us a little bit about your role at Manchester and again the kind of courses you teach and what you're doing.
Chris, yeah. So I have been an AT educator, if you talk truly a faculty member, for less than 2 years. I had 13 years of clinical background. Lucas convinced me that faculty role was a good role. I was a preceptor for 8 years, but
Mm.
man, stepping into a faculty role, was I nervous.
Yeah.
So like you could ask me to place students, shoot, sign me up. I loved interacting with preceptors. I loved interacting with students, placing those students in that role. Sign me up all day. And then Lucas goes, you're going to teach this, and this class as soon as you get here, like within the first 8 weeks of you starting. And I go, you've lost your marbles.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, hold up. Let's look at ATU. And I pulled
Mm.
up, nervous, right? Brand new into faculty member. Like, man, how am I going to make connections, right? I can tell my own personal stories, but like, to me, being able to follow a case
Mm.
really opens up students' eyes.
Mhm.
So, did the webinars with you, learned a decent amount that I felt like I could implement it. The students came to me the very second week of lab. So they've only had a total of maybe 6 days of class. And they're like, man, we are just not getting this heat illness stuff. And I go, I got something. So
Mm.
we pulled up in the ATU, one of your heat illness ones.
Mhm.
We did it as a class. They had to decide as a class what the answer was going to be. We had, oh my goodness, the discussions, like some of the questions, like the class was torn, half wanted to answer A, half wanted to answer B. And I didn't have to do anything for those discussions. The students, man, did they bring, well, what about this and what about that? And I was like, okay, I might be able to teach. Like,
Awesome.
I was like, if
Yeah.
I can pull these into like, so it really helped for them to, right? Because you can learn about lightning, you can learn about a cold tub, you can learn about all of that, but until you can actually apply it and like see the
Mm.
student's mind actually work through and actually have to process something
Mm.
so quickly, right? Like an exam, okay, answers A, I'm done, I'm moving on, right? But how do we get to that application? How do we know it's there? So that was my first experience with it. I went from that, and that lab was like the basic skills lab. So I reviewed didactic work of emergency care. I taught taping. And for me to be able to go, okay, I will show you my way in class. This is what I expect when you come back for your taping skills check off.
Mm.
But please know that, like, here is the resource for you to watch 700 times because I can't stand next to you 700 times. Um, so that ability for them to have that both Lucas and I had vetted, right? Like we had taken the time to watch those videos. We knew that they were high quality. And I was like, yeah, sure, you can pull up a thumb spike on YouTube, but I'm not sure like when we can talk in anatomical, right? Like it just meant so much more to the students.
Mm.
I went from that course and my clinical ed courses in the fall to I stepped into a role of, I was not planning on being in this role, but I stepped into orthopedic eval, both upper and lower, for
Mm.
my first spring with Manchester. And like, students were asking, well, goniometry, what about that? Where are my landings? Where's this? Like, and for me to have the resource that, like, I didn't have to think, right? Like, sometimes just being able to take that piece off of what am I thinking? What, like, oh, was it 10 degrees? Was it 5 degrees? You know, like, just making sure I'm providing every single specific answer that they need. And I could be like, all right, we're pulling up ATU. I will show you. We'll watch the video. So now you've seen it twice from two different instructors. You
Mm.
do. I will walk around the room.
Mhm. Mhm.
So moving into that orthopedic piece, and then I had rehab this fall for the very first time. Lucas won't touch rehab. He thinks 13 years of clinical experience fills me in really well for a
Yeah.
rehab piece, and so then this past semester in the fall, I really spent time on the therapeutic interventions, ones that you guys have put into the mini sims, and I think I've learned a little bit from it. There are about 30 that I put in my class.
Mm.
All the students look at me and tell me I gave them way too many.
Mm.
But those are also the ones that looked at me and said, well, I waited till 5 o'clock before they were due before I did all 30 of them. And I'm like, I don't know how to help you.
Mm. Mhm.
Um, but the feedback that they got and us doing them in class, like, really helped me process through that. I can see their brain work. I can see them process through. Like, it's easy if you're in your room by yourself, just clicking answers, right? Like, I've done it. I'm sure somebody else has done it. A CEU you put on the background and you hit play because you're just like point 0.5 away,
Mhm.
you know, for being done for the year, and you half listen. But when we can pull it into a class discussion, when we could pull it into, well, why did some of you choose this answer, or why did you, or why are you guys on such opposite sides of where we're living with this answer, really helped drive force my ability to watch their critical thinking. I
Mm.
can hear from the preceptor, they can tell me about their critical thinking, but I don't usually get the opportunity to see it unless if it's on the
Mm.
site visit and I just happen to see them work with a patient, right? So
Mm.
this absolutely gave me a chance to know that the product we're providing our students, the way we're watching them critically think, are we able for them to become from that brand new student all the way through graduation, and just watching them grow in that critical thinking, and how can I apply this? What can I do? I'm going to be a clinician. I tell our second years all the time, you got like 2 months. Like, I hope you're ready. But watching them grow in that critical thinking has been so instrumental.
Mm. Wow, so many good things that you've shared with us today. I mean, welcome to the craziness that is academia. The world that we live in. Welcome. Thank you for jumping into this crazy journey with us. But what you were talking about with ATU and the resources, as somebody brand new, having never formally taught, right? I believe we're all educators, we're all teachers in our daily lives, whether it's, clinically or in our professional or personal circles. But now you're in front of a classroom and it's
Um,
like, what do I do? How do I create this? Where do I go? And you felt you had at least a resource, some structure, to provide you with the resources you need for your students. You didn't have to create
yes.
it. You didn't have to, where do I
No.
find it? I'm just going to go through the textbook or the PowerPoints. And, we often teach how we were taught, good, bad, or indifferent. But you had some resources. And then I love what you're talking about. And a few of our folks have chatted in the chat about deep learning. That context really brings things close. That engagement. I mean, the way you're explaining that lab day of that healness, and I can just see it in my mind, and I would get goosebumps that students are so engaged and so like, well, I agree this, I think it's this, and they're going back and forth, but you have the tool to go through that as a class, answer questions, get the feedback, all of those good things. So, in your role as director of clinical education, what have you seen as bridging that gap between classroom and clinic? And do you use ATU for any clinical assessments beside, the Sims, mini Sims, macro Sims? What in your role now with that hat on?
Yeah.
What have you seen?
Currently, we have not integrated it in a outcomes driven base yet.
Mm.
I still feel learning my role, learning what does that look like. I feel I have so much growing to do just in my own confidence as an educator. That looking at ClinEd, I know that they have talked about how being able to see it from multiple clinicians before they even talk to their preceptor, right? Like that piece has come back to us, which has been very helpful, but I don't have any um, outcomes driven yet from preceptor standpoint or out at clinical education. That is something we're aspiring to here coming. Lucas and I sat down in a conversation earlier this morning about what is our aspirational goal? How do we involve preceptors in this? And it's something that I want to look into. It's just currently it was aspirational. So
Yes. We have to solve the problems in front of us, right? What does tomorrow's class look like? What does next rotation look like?
yep.
Educating preceptors and placements and all of that good stuff. But there's room to grow and aspirational. So I am keeping an eye on our time and want to be sensitive to that. And we have just a few more questions for our kind of Q&A or interview section. And then we'll wrap up. Again, we'll give everybody a chance to unmute if you have questions for Lucas or Julie, and they've both graciously said they'll stay on. They've got a few minutes after our recorded official portion. Feel free to drop any questions, comments in the chat as you think about those. And again, keep an eye on that and we'll curate those. But Lucas, let's go back to you a little bit for that program outcomes assessment, accreditation, self-study piece, because you and I have talked on a number of occasions about things that you're pulling together. Julie alluded to it a little bit about, okay, looking at it from a program wide, did it move the needle? Where can we make improvements? So share with us where you're at on that piece.
Yeah, so if you're new to using this resource, I think it's so important that you understand that Chris is absolutely instrumental in all ways getting this off the ground. And so I think I just wanted to commend him on that, but also talk about that's where from the get-go, you are given almost like a curriculum map, if you will, of all the different SIMs, what are they, what's the learning objectives, the critical actions that go along with that. And so this is where on paper, right, I was able to take that and take those and to really, as Julie talked about how many we put in our courses, it's because on paper, ATU gives a lot of different types of patients that if you look at standard 18, it's just phenomenal for that. I truly don't know, other than requiring every student to work in an outpatient, clinic for all rotations. I don't know how you would be able to get as many of these non-athletic patients than throughout these SIMs. So it really helped us build our self-study and these areas that we felt like we weren't quite getting as much formative assessment on. Right, we were getting either the knowledge, the lower tier of be able to identify, but it was really able to help us with that middle piece in between the knowledge and the basic skills, and then using our OSCE and our in-person SIMs, our standardized patients, clinicals. It really has offered us, I think, this really good in between to help with that scaffolding that's needed. I think that's the key that I've seen there, is that it didn't take us quite as large of that jump. And I think that's what I'm really excited to continue to monitor to see, because I'm sure that there's more things that Julie and I can do to help smooth that out even, right? Like we want it to be stair steps, but I think just even adding that step between the two, that's been really instrumental. And to be able to tell that story to the Katie and to our peer reviewers, that's something I'm really excited not only to share with you all, but to share with them of how we've used that. And if you really look at all the different standards that these different mini sims or the different resources help with, it's really tremendous. Now, that's one thing that Chris and I have been talking about, is that I've had to build that because how we're linking it to the our curriculum and things like that, how it looks. But I've been really pleased to see how this integration has helped with just making me feel overall that we're getting the students that extra step in that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Sure. Yeah, and so anyone who is attending live, if you check the resources tab, I did put in there the link to our kind of ATU and at least the 2020 Katie Standard crosswalk, and I've got some work to do now that we've got the 2026 version with new numbers, new letters, new lists, right? All that good stuff. But that's, me, right? That's as a fellow program director, peer reviewer, fellow journeyman along with you. That's some of the work that I can do. But Lucas, you've also been very gracious to think about some ideas of getting program director groups together. And I'm happy to facilitate some of that as we go forward. Just this faculty lounge idea of helping each other go through these processes of accreditation, sharing documents back and forth. But like you've said, you've taken your curriculum outcomes, map them to courses, map them to standards, map them to ATU resources, and now you've got this really clear roadmap of curricular design. So,
Yeah.
um,
And I cannot wait. I'd love to. Julie and I are all about let's share this wealth, and so I think that's the next exciting piece of this to watch you not fumble where we did.
so if we had your students here, what would they want us to know as educators,
Well, so,
administrators?
so you take away anything else from this. So also take this. I asked for feedback on ATU the week and 2 weeks before they sat for the BOC, most of them. But just remember, like as we get so close into the self study and particularly with the standards, they reminded me that one of the students literally said, "We couldn't care less about the Katie standards. We want to know how we can take what's being taught and apply it." I'm like,
Mm,
absolutely,
mhm.
absolutely. And so even sometimes in the language of I've gotten to the habit of using the standards to help justify why we're doing these things, and I think just continue to stay grounded, as I think many of you, likely all of you, do. Just to remind them of this is why we need to know this also for clinical practice, and where might there be some, the video, for example, the resource says this, and I think being really authentic and saying, this, yes, this is absolutely one way you can do this, but this is a way that you can shift this based on X, Y, or Z. And I think that that's the takeaway that they want us to know, is that they want to be able to connect all of this back to their future clinical practice. And so wherever possible, to make those connections, and to also, I think, to allow them to see that they were able to make those connections, just like what Julie talked about. I think being able to not just assign them and have them do outside of class, but to really use them, I think, more intentionally in class. I just want to brag on Julie for a second. And, they actually came to my office, all of them, like all 7 of them came to my office the second week of classes last year. And that's never been a good thing in my experience. Typically, when students come to the
What?
program director's office,
What's happening?
yeah, it's like, but they wanted me to know how they love class with her and how excited they were. And so I think use your excitement for the content and use the structure of the materials, but gosh darn it, don't forget all the clinical experience that you have. Like, they want to hear all of that. And so this
Yeah,
is this is a resource. This is not the end all be all.
true.
Use this as a beginning place, not as an end.
Yeah. Well, Julie, anything from you, like tips, tricks, and then we'll have a couple of closing comments and then open up the queue for questions and answers. But well, as you're thinking of that, Lucas, you had shared this with me the other day. I don't want to steal your thunder, but Julie, you are also nominated for a university-wide teaching award, and that you are new to academia. And you're doing something right. So
Yeah,
congratulations, my friend. Keep it going. To be nominated, to be student nominated, is quite something. So thank you for jumping into academia. Thank you for sharing. But would you like to share any of those, like, okay, aha lessons, and for the rest of us? Yeah.
First of all, thank you. I wasn't expecting it to get hot in my office today. Um, Tips and tricks.
Mm,
So, being that brand new faculty member, knowing that I had something that I trusted, right? Like that
mm,
I trusted after reviewing your resources, everything there. I knew that I could spend more time and trusting myself. And like I had time for my clinical stories because I didn't have to prep a scenario to walk through a case. I didn't have to trust putting create a case on ChatGPT, right? And hope that I didn't have to change 17 different things to make it an actually true statement. So tips and tricks is the resources that I found were absolutely phenomenal. They gave me the confidence that I told Lucas I had imposter syndrome as soon as I stepped onto campus. Um, so they gave me the confidence to know that no, I know what I'm talking about and I can teach it to not just one, right? I was used to that one on one. Here, let me give you my experiences, but to share it with the class. So dive in, research it, like spend a little bit of time, and you will be absolutely amazed on everything that you will find in your guys' resources.
great. Well said. So let me just wrap up kind of our time together by letting everyone know we're here for you. We are at your service, quite literally. We've got lots of great support resources. Please reach out to me anytime if you'd like personalized, individualized, one-on-one support. Shoot me an email, chris.s@clinicalpattern.com. You can scan that QR code if you're, watching live or later on demand, or if, you got access to the resources tab. There's a link to my meeting calendar. So feel free to choose a day time that works best for you. Certainly join us if you're available for our faculty webinar series. We do these about every 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to take a kind of a short break. We've got some holidays coming up, right? And we'll be back in about 3 weeks. So please join us for that. Take a look at the educator events page. You can sign up there. Certainly keep an eye on your inbox. We do a lot of email communication as our way of reaching out to everybody. So we're here for you. Please reach out and let us know how we can help you. Thank you again, Lucas, Julie, for your time, the work that you do on a daily basis for impacting students, for impacting the profession, for supporting each other, and just for being part of our ATU faculty family. Thank you, everyone, for carving out some time in your busy schedules for joining us today, or if you've spent some time watching this later on demand. We certainly recognize that is valuable. Please follow us on LinkedIn if you're on LinkedIn. We post things there as well, and have the latest kind of news updates. Or certainly, again, watch your inbox for those good old ATU emails. I want to wish everyone a good rest of your day and a successful academic term with ATU.